Okay, everybody, so today we're going to start talking a little bit about insects. And specifically, I'm just going to give you a general overview. Next class, we're going to look at their internal anatomy. Now, they belong to a subphylum called Hexapoda, and hexa comes from a Greek word that means six, poda means legs, so they have 6 legs. So Hexapoda is named for the presence of 6 legs in members of this group. They have 3 tagmata, which means segments. So they have 3 segments, a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. You know where your head is. Your thorax is basically from below your head to the middle of your chest, just below your rib cage. And then your abdomen is essentially your belly, where your digestive system is. Appendages for insects are located both on the head and the thorax, not the abdomen. Insects have jaws and 1 pair of antennae on the head. The thorax usually has the 3 pairs of jointed legs. They are an arthropod, so they have jointed legs. And in many ways, in many species, they have 1 or 2 pairs of wings. Not all species have wings, but most do. A segmented abdomen is attached to the thorax and contains the digestive, respiratory, excretory, and reproductive structures. So we'll see that on these 2 animals here, this wasp. We have the abdomen, where the digestive, respiratory, excretory, and reproductive structures are located. It's segmented. This animal has 2 pairs of wings, front and hind wings. This segment that you see right here, it's very exaggerated in a wasp. This is the thorax, and this is the head with the antenna and the mouth parts. And then you can see the 6 jointed legs. In the grasshopper, we have head, we have thorax, we have abdomen segmented, wings, 6 pairs of legs, antenna, and eyes. Now, the studies of insects is called entomology, and I have some video clips here for you. I'm going to show one of these in class. Insects are the most diverse and abundant and widespread of all groups of arthropods. There are more insect species than all other animals combined. The number of insect species classified at the moment is over 1 million, but experts think that there could be as many as 30 million species out there. So on this graph, you can kind of see that represented. Here is how many insects are on the planet, and then these are the other arthropods. These are all the other invertebrate phyla that we've studied this year. And then here's the chordates, so that's like birds, reptiles, mammals. And so you can see insects is definitely the majority of life on this planet. Now, insects are the most successful of all organisms for a lot of reasons. One, their ability to fly. This allows them to escape predators and also disperse rapidly to new environments, so go to new environments. This is an advantage because if their environment changes in a negative way, they can go find a new environment that's better suited for them. Animals like sponges that are sessile can't do that. They have to deal with what they have. Insects evolved wings way before other animals. So they invaded the air spaces around 250 million years ago, around 250 million years before flying reptiles, birds, or mammals. Now, another reason they're so successful is their exoskeleton. It provides protection and limits evaporation. So when animals invaded land from the oceans, they needed a way to keep water with them that allowed them to invade land. And so how arthropods and insects do that is with this exoskeleton that's waxy and hard and prevents evaporation. Their small size helps. So that means that more animals can share the same space. They can hide easier. There's less competition for food because of their size. Their shorter lifespan helps because that allows them to evolve and adapt as a species quicker. And they also lay a large number of eggs. That makes them pretty successful. And the ability to engage in complex behaviors such as communication is also a biggie. Now, I'm going to talk about communication for a second. Insects communicate with each other by a few ways, by chemical means, which is pheromones, visual, auditory, which is hearing, and tactile, which is touching signals. Now, pheromones are chemical communications, is what we use pheromones for. And a pheromone is a chemical released by one organism that affects the behavior of the other organism of the same species. And it affects their behavior through smell or taste. Pheromones can be sensed really long distances. Ants use pheromones a lot, so they'll march along a tightly defined route when they're doing that, they're following a trail of pheromones left by ants that have come before them. They do this to track the path for a food source back to their nest. And as other ants follow this path, they add pheromones to make the trail stronger and easier to follow. And there's some video clips related to this that I'll show you. Now, honeybees also use pheromones. They do this to identify their own hives and to send messages to other members of the hive in the event of attack. Some insects and other animals also secrete pheromones to attract mates. Insects also communicate through sound. Sounds serve as warning devices, advertisement of territorial claims, or courtship songs. For example, crickets chirp by rubbing a specialized structure on their forewing called a scraper against a vein on the other wing, and that rubbing sound makes the sound that you're familiar with crickets. Now, all cricket species produce several calls, and those calls differ from those of other species. Now, even though the other species will look really, really similar, entomologists have started identifying species of crickets not by how they look, but how they actually sound, by these sounds that they make. Now, insects can also communicate by using bioluminescence, one of my favorites. Bio means life, luminescence means light, so this is life that makes its own light. These animals that you see in these pictures, these two here, are fireflies. So each species of firefly or lightning bug has their own patterns of flashes to locate a prospective mate. This species of glowworm, which is a species of firefly in the genus Lamprey, these guys are beetles, and you can see that, how they look right here. And they're beetles, and you know that because they have this hard case that closes over their wings when not in use. So fireflies are pretty cool. We do actually have fireflies in Utah. I've never seen one in Utah. I've seen them in like South Carolina and Georgia and Florida, but we do have them. They're kind of rare, and we'll talk more about this next week. Now, insects also use tactile, that's touch communication, such as tapping, stroking, grasping, and antenna touching. All of these things evoke responses varying from recognition of each other to recruitment of other organisms to their hive, and also to alarm. Insects also use dancing to communicate. Bees have two types of dance, a round and a waggle dance. The round dance indicates a food source that's nearby, but it doesn't tell information about direction or distance. A waggle dance, the angle of the dance indicates the direction of the food, like south, north, west, east, and the duration of the dance and the number of waggles indicates the food's distance. Bees are really freaking smart, and here's some graphics describing that. I will show you some of these clips that are related to this. Many forms of defense are another reason why insects are so successful. Insects are highly adaptive in the evasion of predators. And they can be adapted through the use of color patterns and body forms. And here's some examples. There's examples of mimicry and aposematic. And mimicry is when you imitate a noxious species, a species that has a bad taste, smell, or poisonous properties. And that's one thing that's happening right here. Okay, there's actually two things happening with this animal right here. This is a monarch butterfly, which does have a really nasty taste. This is a viceroy butterfly, which is perfectly good to eat. It does not have a nasty taste, but it mimics the coloration of this noxious species. Now, when an animal uses colors, the reason the monarch butterfly has all these bright colors is to advertise, saying, hey man, don't eat me because I'm poisonous. And so when an animal advertises its colors to tell everybody that it's poisonous, that's called aposematic. So aposematic coloration. Here's another example of mimicry. This is a type of caterpillar that's mimicking, that's trying to look like a snake to look more dangerous. Crypsis is a type of camouflage when the shape or coloration is designed so that you can't see the animal, so you can't notice it. So here's a moth here that looks just like this bark that it's on. There's the legs and the head. Here's a type of leaf insect, and up here is a type of cicada. And both of these, notice how it even copies like the vein pattern of leaves to really look like a leaf. Here's a type of praying mantis that's designed to look like a flower. Now, some of these insects, like stink bugs, have repulsive odors and taste. We have a few of these stink bugs in Utah. We have these little green guys right here, and we also have these little brown guys down here. And so you'll see them. These brown ones are really common. Other insects, for example, bees and ants, protect themselves by a good offense, which means they can be very aggressive and will bite or sting if they need to. Many insects practice chemical warfare, like the bombardier beetle. These guys produce an irritating spray, which they can aim accurately at attacking enemies, and I'll show you this clip. We have a type of ant in Utah called the wood ant that sprays formic acid out of its posterior end to ward off enemies. Some insects work together as part of a colony, and we call these guys social insects, which are like ants, bees, wasps, and termites. Honeybees have one of the most complex social organizations in the entire insect world. You can have as many as 70,000 bees living in a single hive, and they can have three castes to their society, so three roles to their society. You have a single sexually mature female or queen, which you can see right here at the bottom. You have a few hundred drones right here on the bottom right, which are sexually mature males that fertilize the queen, then die after mating. And then you have the bees that we mostly encounter, which are the worker bees here on the left, which are sexually inactive genetic females. They take care of the young. They secrete the wax that's used to build the honeycomb of the hive. They gather nectar and pollen from flowers. They manufacture honey, and then they ventilate and guard the hive. Now, drones develop by something called parthenogenesis, which is from an unfertilized egg, which means that they only have one copy of every chromosome instead of two like you and I. So when you have one copy of every chromosome in your body, we say that's haploid, which humans are not. If you have two, you're diploid, which humans are. So di in science means two. So queens and workers develop from fertilized eggs, and thus they're diploid. Okay, so if it's an unfertilized egg, that means that it was only one organism that made that, not a male and a female. So that's why there's only one set of chromosomes. If it's a fertilized eggs, you had a male and a female, and so that's why there's two sets of chromosomes. That's it, and we'll talk more about this in class. Next week, we're going to look at the insect internal anatomy.